My name is Sathanuman Singh Khalsa. Today's date is June 20th, 2015. In 1984, I was 34 years old. I was living in Orlando, Florida. I was going around to Gurdwaras in Jacksonville, Florida, and other places to talk to Sikh families who had loved ones who were either harmed, wounded, or killed in India. Not necessarily at Harimandir Sahib, but in Delhi or something like that. It was covered by three TV stations. It's covered by C-SPAN, which is the most neutral. It was covered by CBS in New York City, and it was covered by CNN. The reason why I don't believe enough Americans understood what happened in 1984 is because there was so much emotion from the Sikh community, understandably, but that got in the way of making people aware of what was going on in India, what really transpired, what took place. And I saw an article in the Orlando Sentinel written by a conservative journalist who wrote an article. He basically wrote no article. He took what was written by the Associated Press, because there's only two international reports. There's AP, Associated Press, and UP International, UPI. And so he was getting this information. Orlando Sentinel is a conservative newspaper, and he was an editor, and he wrote an article about Sikhs being terrorists. So I called him up and spoke with him on the phone. And I said, "You don't know me, but I've seen your article, and I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in the fourth estate?" "Of course I do." "So you believe in the free press, in the democracy, correct?" "Yes." "Then I challenge you to get a visa and go to Punjab right now and report what's going on in the Punjab right now." He called me back 2 weeks later and said, "You were right. I couldn't get a visa." I said, "That's correct." And these people are keeping us in the dark. Florida. My two daughters were in Mussoorie, in what was then Uttar Pradesh, India, going to a Sikh school. My nephews were also at that school, and my future son-in-laws were also at that school. So I had that. There was no internet, no cell phones, no fax machines. The only thing we had, and phones that didn't work. So the only thing we had was our faith and our trust in Guru. We were dealing with what was going on. Were our children going to be okay? Even though they were high up on a mountain, Dehradun is the valley, predominantly Hindu culture in that valley. And so, yes, we had to deal with that. I don't think we heard from our children until winter. It was 6 months. We heard about what they were doing and that they were okay because my teacher was in touch with the U.S. Embassy in Delhi as well as the military base in Dehradun, and so there was an awareness of there were 120 young people in the school, Guru Nanak 5th Centenary School in Mussoorie. We were aware through that, but we didn't talk to our children until they came home. And that was hard because now, do you let them go back? And they did. But so imagine that. We're not Indians. I'm not Indian, this lifetime anyway. But they were in that culture, and I had to trust that everything was going to be okay. Well, they told me that, okay, after June 6th, okay, after what happened in Amritsar, and what was going on, what you're talking about, leading on to what went on in Delhi and other places around, there was rumors in that the people in Dehradun who were reacting to this, Indira Gandhi's assassination, wanted to go to the school in Mussoorie and get these kids. My kids told me this, and my future son-in-laws told me this. They said they didn't come because they heard that we practiced gutka, and they saw that we had swords, and there were Nahangs living with us, and that we had weapons. And so nobody came. I said, well, good the rumor spread like that. But that's why that's what they told me. They told me those kind of stories. I was in the plane from Orlando to New York, and my youngest daughter My oldest daughter was feeling very sad because she had left her mother, and she knew that she should go back, but she was afraid that she wouldn't. They had already been through this thing. They already had been through this. So now they're going back. And my daughter, oldest daughter, wouldn't eat on the plane. But there was a movie on. They had movies back then on short flights from Orlando to New York. They don't do that anymore. And the youngest daughter was watching this film, and it was called Protocol, and it was a comedy. It was about a white woman that was abducted by a Middle Eastern sheikh. And my youngest daughter turned to me. She was 8 years old, and she said, "Papaji, if Sapavinkar and I were abducted and taken away from you, and you were told that if you were to remove your turban and stop living as a Sikh, we would be returned, would you do that?" 8 years old. In my head, this is what the conversation I had. Do I say, of course I would never remove my turban, of course I would, or would I say, I would do anything to get you back? Because both of those things are going on in a parent's mind. And I just looked at her and I said, Siddhi Swamikar, what would you want your mother and I to do? I felt I got off the hook kind of, like what do you, and she said, that we would want you to stay as Sikhs no matter what happened to us, knowing Guru would always take care of us. And then I cried. So when I went in 85, I arrived in, I went to Masuri to see my children, and then we went from there to Hemkunt. So my first journey to India in 1985, I was 35 years old, was to go to Hemkunt Sahib. From there I came and I went to Bangla Sahib in Delhi, and from there I went to Sachkhand Gurdwara, and I immersed myself in, and I could see the damage in Delhi at that time. This is only a year later. When I finally got to go to Harimandir Sahib in 1999, after I went to Anandpur Sahib, there was a stack of marble from the Pakarma all piled up to the side, inside the complex. And I have that, still have that piece I got that has, it's written in Punjabi on the stone. And I asked the Sevadar, could I take it? He said, yes. That's what I have to remember what took place and how they tried to cover it all up and, and not let anybody see what they did to Akal Takht. And I will tell you the way I felt and the way I still feel is the Akal Takht is living, okay? So Guru Granth Sahib is living Guru, right? Akal Takht is living. Guru Hargobind sat on the throne which faces Harimandir Sahib. The Akal Takht sacrificed itself for Sikhi. It sacrificed itself, in my opinion, for Harimandir Sahib. In 2000, when I was at Harimandir Sahib, I sat doing Reras at the far corner, if you know where the causeway is that goes from over to Harimandir Sahib, right? From where the Akal Takht is. Yeah. And so that far corner on that side was a gentleman, an old gentleman. I was at the time 50 years old. I'm 65 now. I was 50 and this gentleman was in his 60s, and he sat there with his kurta and he was reading it. And when he finished, he couldn't speak much English, but he said, I was here on June 6, 1984. I was sitting right here on this spot. And he pulled up his kurta, and there were 2 bullet holes, machine gun bullet holes in his kurta. He still wears that kurta. And he showed me in Harimandir Sahib where there was a kanpat going on and where the Guru was struck by a stray bullet. Still there. So I learned from people there, so I got that exposure. Okay? As long as Sikhs keep doing these kind of events and keep showing the public how we are, who we are, and treat and interact with the mayor. Like the mayor last year got to go to Harimandir Sahib, the mayor of Salem, who always attends these parades. She got to go to Amritsar. She got to have special visits to historical places in Amritsar. So the more we do these things, the more we interface with our fellow people in this country, the more they will want to know more about 1984 and what happened to the sacrifices, the people that and what Sikhs did and what led up to 1984. See, it all has to be, the story has to be told. They don't know about what happened after partition. They don't know 1 million people died in the partition of India in 1947. They don't know that the Sikhs never signed the Constitution in 1960. They don't know any of this stuff. Because even in Oregon, where the first Sikh arrived here in 1912 and lived in Astoria, they thought he was a Hindu. So we are slowly, slowly making people aware by our presence.